Previously on Top 10 Facts The Walking Dead. Aside from the amazing makeup work, the zombies in the show never blink or breathe, so every blink and steam formed when breathing in cold environments has to be removed in post-production. Even the noises the zombies make are added in post, so a scene like this would sound more like this. At the very beginning of the first The Walking Dead game, when Lee is sitting in the back of a police car, we get to listen to this officer talking about a convict who was caught in the act of murdering his wife.
They caught the fucker red-handed, stabbing his wife, cutting her up as the boys came through the door.
This is actually a reference to the character Thomas Richards from the Walking Dead comics. While every incarnation of The Walking Dead has so far taken place in the eastern US, mainly in Atlanta and Washington DC, there's actually a spin-off TV series in the works that will follow a new group of survivors taking place in Los Angeles. Remember this scene? You know, the awesome ending of Season 2 that introduced Michonne for the first time? Well, this is actually not her. By that I mean the actor actually plays Michonne, because at the time of shooting this scene, Danai Gurira had not yet been cast, so this is actually someone else. There are a couple of pretty neat references between The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad. Remember back in Season 1 when Glenn steals this red car? Well, this car was later referenced in Breaking Bad as well as Glenn himself.
Oh, and make sure you talk to the general manager. His name is Glenn.
Glenn.
In Season 2, we see Daryl going through Merle's bag of drugs in one scene. That blue stuff at the bottom is of course a nod to the infamous Blue Sky drug manufactured by Walter and Jesse. And speaking of Jesse, in Season 4, when Daryl talks about his brother Merle, he mentions a dealer he used to work with that sound just like Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad.
Merle had this dealer. This janky little white guy. Tweaker. And he pulls a gun. Sticks it right here. He says, "I'm gonna kill you, bitch."
A lot of things are obviously very different in the TV series compared to the comics. For example, Lori dies pretty early on and Rick and Andrea become lovers. Carol commits suicide and Glenn and Maggie later adopt her daughter Sophia. Another big change is the fact that in the comics, the governor cuts off Rick's right hand pretty early on. They opted not to do this in the show, however, because it would have required them to digitally remove it in every single episode. And while speaking of differences, the creator said himself that the reason the two mediums are so drastically different is because he wanted to surprise fans of the comics so that no one could really predict what would happen next. Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl in the TV series, originally auditioned for the role of his brother Merle, but instead the producers were so impressed by his audition that they wrote the character Daryl specifically for him. Daryl has since become a fan favorite and is so popular in fact that he has his own video game and might become a character later on in the comics. When Telltale Games were developing the first The Walking Dead game, they modeled and named the character Doug after a friend of one of the designers. This inspired them to host a contest for people who pre-ordered the game. The 5 winners would then appear as a zombie within the game itself, and one out of those 5 would also appear as a survivor. The surviving character can be seen in episode 4 and all the zombie characters can be seen in episode 5. The reason they call the zombies walkers, biters or other names is that in the Walking Dead universe, the works of George A. Romero were never made and thus zombies never appeared in fiction. However, the word itself does actually exist as it has been used on a few occasions in the comics and in the video games. At the very beginning of the show, we first get to see Rick and what his life is like before everything goes down. But only a few minutes into the episode he gets shot and ends up in a coma at the hospital. After an unspecified amount of time has passed, he wakes up and discovers the now zombie-infested wasteland the world has become. Okay, but how long after the outbreak was Rick in a coma? Take a listen to this.
Gas lines have been down for maybe a month.
Then there's also this.
The only one. Been a few months.
And this.
And 63 days since the disease abruptly went global.
So at the very least, we know for a fact that he was in a coma for 2 whole months after the outbreak began. This has led many to wonder how Rick can still be alive, because a person usually can't survive without water for more than 3 days, and these IV fluid bags only last a couple of hours at most. In extreme cases, people have survived for as much as 10 days without water, but still, 2 months would be impossible. So how the hell is Rick still alive? Is this just a major plot hole they forgot about? Or is it something else? Some think Rick is still in a coma and that everything is just a dream. Others say that the coma somehow prevented him from turning while still keeping him alive and possibly even making him immune to the virus. And while theories like these are fun, there's actually a much better explanation. In the webisode The Oath, we meet a woman that actually stayed behind at the hospital after it was overrun and abandoned. The reason she stayed behind was because she felt it was her duty to continue and help people. So it's reasonable to assume that she also took care of Rick while he was in a coma. This is also supported by the fact that the room is a little different when he wakes up compared to when Shane left it and blocked the doors. For example, there were 2 IV stands with 3 bags, but when he wakes up, there's only 1 stand with 1 bag. No bed sheets, 1 desk, another desk. Then there's a few more of these minor details. I think it's pretty safe to say that Rick survived only because this woman took care of him.